Morning everyone, this is BritSimon. So I want to give you a status update on the lawsuits and where we stand. It's been kind of a busy couple of weeks for the lawsuits in a way, but progress isn't being made at the speed that I would like to see it, at least. So as a quick sort of summary, there are several lawsuits at the moment. Curtis Morrison has two mandamus lawsuits. There's the AILA case, and there's another case brought by a group of lawyers, Charles Cook, Greg Siskind, and others. And so there are four lawsuits that all look to challenge the immigration ban in various ways. All suits have been reassigned to one particular judge, Judge Mehta. I've written about this before, and I also let people know that there was going to be a hearing on last Friday morning. This morning is Monday morning, so last Friday morning there was a hearing, really a procedural hearing, I guess you would describe it as, to discuss the timing, the scheduling of what will happen next on those four lawsuits. Now, the fact that those lawsuits have been combined has taken some time. It's a good and a bad thing. It's a sort of double-edged sword. It's taken some time to organize these lawsuits, and the lawsuits are complex. They involve many plaintiffs. One is trying to get approval as a class action case. The others, have named plaintiffs. All of them look to challenge the ban in various ways. Curtis Morrison, in particular, is looking for an outcome to extend beyond the 30th of September. So there is lots of competing information that the judge has got to go through, and in a sense we're paying a price for that complication. The price being that there's a lot of stuff, a lot of argument to be gone through by the judge, and a lot of not competing priorities, but similarly stated, perhaps different arguments from the different lawyers, etc., essentially saying the same thing. So we've probably in reality paid a bit of a price in terms of the timeline for that. So the timeline now looks like we won't have a final decision until the end of August. There is a period of time now. On the 12th there'll be another hearing, but there's going to be a period of time where there'll be some sort of toing and froing between both sides. There'll be a chance for the government's lawyers to make their argument against the lawsuit. Then the other side, our side as it were, will have a chance to argue against those arguments, and so on. And the judge is setting time up for those things to happen, which is a necessary part of the process. Given my absolute ideal situation, we started talking about this lawsuit a month ago. If it had only been for DV winners and it was simplistic, perhaps we could have got a quick TRO against that. But there are more people involved, and more types of plaintiffs involved. The scope of the immigrant bans are very wide, and so the number of people being hurt by this ban is very wide. And so we can't just look at it from a DV lottery winner's point of view. It has to be looked at it from a different perspective as well. And there are many lottery winners in different scenarios, right? So I've written a couple of posts just recently, and sort of continuing from a previous YouTube video that I had, that categorizes the DV 2020 winners into 5 distinct groups, right? So actually, let me number the groups. I know the groups, obviously, but let me number the groups as I have numbered them in my article. So, okay. So my 5 groups are, firstly, the people who have already had their visas but they were unable to travel, and the visas have since expired or are about to expire. They were unable to travel because of the pandemic. That's my first group. The second group is people that had interviews and were either told they were on AP or they were told they were approved. But either way, frankly, if you have an interview and you don't immediately get your visa within a few days, then you're essentially on AP. So all of those people that have had their interviews, that's Group 2, and they are on AP, and some of those cases will now be ready to be approved, but haven't been approved because of the ban. People that had, and my third group is people that had interviews scheduled by KCC at the embassies, probably mostly in March and April, maybe some in May. But those interviews were then cancelled by the immigrant ban. So that's Group 3. Group 4 is people that have received the ready for scheduling email. So they've sent in their documents, they're ready for scheduling entirely, and they've got that confirmation email. So and Group 5 could be people that have sent in all the documents but didn't get the confirmation email saying you're ready for scheduling. That's an important point. So that's Group 5. So Groups 1 and 2 don't need an interview to get their cases pushed through. So if, for example, we were able to get the ban successfully challenged at the end of August, Groups 1 and 2 would still have a chance to get their visas, because all they need is for the embassy to approve the visa that they had, or reissue the previously issued but now expired visa. So there are people in Groups 1 and 2 who could be helped by an end of August successful challenge. Group 3, in theory, could also be helped because these cases are sitting with the embassies. And depending, if we got a successful ban challenge at the end of August, in theory, some of the embassies could immediately reschedule those interviews, have those interviews in September. People would probably be wise to take a medical again prior to those interviews, but those in theory could get helped. But that would require an interview, and so if the embassy is locked down and not doing interviews because of the pandemic, and not fully open in some way, then that's a problem, right? Group 4 are people that are ready for scheduling. Scheduling takes weeks before the actual interview, so we're not going to see large numbers of interviews scheduled and happening within September. We're running short of time. And Group 5, for that group, there's going to be no way to force KCC to do this, to process and schedule those interviews, etc. We're really out of time on Group 5, and possibly out of time on Group 4 as well. And there is also some nuances. Curtis Morrison, I quoted Curtis Morrison's update this morning because I thought it was rather good, the way he laid everything out, and I believe it's largely correct. He's also pointed out, and this is something that I've seen as well, that within the Schengen area of Europe and the UK and Ireland, where there is a ban on travel to the US from those areas, the embassies in those areas are saying that apart from the immigrant ban, they're also unable to issue visas because of the Schengen area ban. And again, it's back to this point that not being able to enter the USA means that the embassies won't issue the visa because they know you can't enter. Now, strictly speaking, that's not a fair connection, but that's how they operate it, right? And that's one of the things that some of the lawsuits are looking to challenge, by the way. So we'll see if that is a possible type of challenge that we can get around that. But that is the reality of embassies in the EU at the moment. So there are lots of difficulties. We're running short of time. We had more time, but it's a very complex case, and having lots of different sort of many of the same arguments being made by different firms of lawyers, etc., has actually caused the judge to say, hang on a minute, there's a lot of stuff going on here. We need the arguments to be prepared by both sides fairly carefully, and he's not going to just blindly issue a TRO, temporary restraining order, without having everybody have the chances to make their case. If a judge acted in that way, it wouldn't be fair, it wouldn't be just, and a decision that made that way would be likely to be appealed and overturned because all the facts were not considered. Now, Curtis Morrison is saying that he feels, and he hasn't worded it quite this way, so Curtis, if I'm misphrasing how you would say things, forgive me on this, but I think Curtis, reading between the lines, I think Curtis feels the most likely and best outcome is being allowed to issue visas after September 30th. The law is written against that, right? It says that the program ends on September 30th. But there was, and Curtis points this out, there was this case before where prior to September 30th, visas were set aside for cases that were then going to be resolved after September 30th. So you could see that as kind of a, one way to get around that. And I think Curtis also is requesting just a complete delay of the DV 2020 processing, to extend it for months, perhaps to have it running concurrently with DV 2021. There's all sorts of problems with that. It's certainly not an easy thing for a judge to rule. It might be precluded by the law as it's written anyway. But I'm gonna be careful with what I say about that, partly because I don't want to add fuel to the government's fire, and partly because frankly, smart lawyers will argue, smart judges will rule, and let's see what happens. I'm not going to try and predict that one way or the other. Let's just see what happens. So let's see how that goes. Meanwhile, Trump's going mad. Just before the weekend, he issued 4 executive orders unrelated to immigration, but a complete overstepping of the constitutional role of the president. Now, in the old days, when Barack Obama did things through executive order, Republicans got their knickers in a twist and said he was overstepping. You want to see overstepping? Just look at what Trump did on Friday. I mean, it's ridiculous. He's trying to modify tax law. He's trying to modify what's called the power of the purse. These are things reserved for Congress, and he's totally in that area by executive order. So Republicans, frankly, you can stick it up your arse in terms of talking about what Barack Obama did, because Trump is just left, right, and centre, just ripping out the rule book. He's been emboldened, by the way, by the ruling on DACA. He's taken that in some weird way as being as having been granted with additional powers to rule by executive order, because the executive orders by Obama stood firm against his wanting to change that, and so he now feels that that's given him additional permissions. I don't think the Constitution agrees with him, but nevertheless, with executive orders, a bad executive order needs to be challenged by the court system, and as we can see with the immigration one, it takes time to resolve that, and frankly, in the meantime, Trump wins the points that he's trying to score. So he issues an executive order. It may not stand. It may therefore just become a negotiating ploy, but he wins in the short term anyway, because you can't challenge things fast enough. So Trump has decided to just ignore the normal role of the president, and he's just trying to please his base. So it's amazing. I will undoubtedly get questions on this video or comments about protesting and appealing to Trump let me just point out, in all things immigration related, Trump is not your friend. He's not trying to help immigrants. He's not interested in your appeals. He's not interested in your lives. His base support him in his more xenophobic and racist ways, and so he likes to feed into that. So he's not going to do anything that would help immigrants and possibly cost him votes with his base, right? So forget it. That's not going to happen. So we just have to wait and see what the outcome of the lawsuit challenge will be. It's going to go back and forth until I think it's August 27th, and we'll have to see what happens on the 27th. But it's going to take all of that time, I think, to resolve the immigrant ban. And in the meantime, Trump will continue to be Trump. And the other thing that's obviously a major thing right now, I mean, the pandemic's enormous, and over 160,000 people in America have died now through the pandemic. It's been badly mismanaged over here, really badly handled, obviously from starting with Trump on down. So the economy's in a mess. People are arguing whether they should or shouldn't wear a mask. I mean, just wear the damn mask already, people. Who cares about your rights when we're talking about other people dying? But Trump has set a bad example and has undermined even the science by his own science advisors. He's undermined that left, right, and centre. And so our country, America, more than any other country in the world, has demonstrated how badly a pandemic, can be handled, and how terribly impactful it really can be. I'm sure other countries have suffered, but few of those other countries have got the resources and the abilities that America has, and has also suffered so many needless deaths. So thanks for that, Trump, and your buddies. And the other thing that's coming up, of course, is the election in November. Biden isn't saying or doing very much at the moment, which is worrying. He's late in picking his VP. Not really late, it's about now. But he's not out there sort of pounding the streets yet. And that vacuum is allowing Trump to continue doing whatever Trump does. So we need Biden to come out fighting strong. And whilst Biden has the edge, people would rather have, frankly, an old man, that does no harm and has some wisdom, rather than Trump, who's consistently doing harm in many ways. So people would rather have that, but Biden's got to get out and win people's confidence. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm hopeful that Trump will lose the presidential race in November, but we'll see. And the other thing is that Trump is sowing the seeds of an argument that the election is going to be somehow compromised and unfair and manipulated. Well, he's the president. He's in charge of having the election being fair and not manipulated. It's a ridiculous argument he's making, but of course he's sowing the seeds to later be able to argue, well, yeah, I lost the election, but it's not fair, so I'm not going. I strongly believe that he'll be walked out of the White House if necessary, but we're probably going to see legal challenges and battles that we won't know in early November, as we normally know. We may not know immediately who won the election. So it may take some time to resolve that, and normally on January 20th the new president takes office. So I hope Biden pulls his finger out and starts doing some work, picks a VP that doesn't appear too socialist. And frankly, Kamala Harris would be a bad choice in my opinion, because she's too far left. And that will just give the right something to argue about. So I'd rather see a less less left VP choice. So Biden needs to get out there and do that, and pick a decent VP and start campaigning, start trying to win the vote of the people, start pointing out the differences between his positions and Trump's positions. 4 more years of Trump will be very, very difficult. Very difficult for this country, very damaging to this country. This country's economy is shattered, and was already had problems prior to the pandemic. So because Trump has just given away lots of tax breaks without any way to pay for it, it's been great for big business, and many of us have benefited by that, but poor people in this country haven't benefited at all by it. Funny enough, Trump supporters are generally from the lower economic classes, and they're loving it. They're too dumb to realize what's being done to them, but there you go. Anyway, so that's a sort of political update as well. So there you go, you got more than you bargained for this morning. That's my positions on those things. Feel free to argue with me about politics, but just understand you haven't got a hope. If you want to do that, you're outclassed, you're outgunned. Anyway, that's the position on the lawsuit, on politics, on the pandemic, on the economy. I hope that was helpful. All right, cheers now. Bye bye.